And we're live.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'd like to call this special council meeting of January 24th, 2022 to order. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sandra Easton, Mayor of the Town of Lincoln and Chair of today's special council meeting. We're meeting electronically through Zoom during this declared emergency period. Members of the public may observe the proceedings by accessing the live webcast at our YouTube channel. Madam Clerk, the national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us commands. Canto brasse porte le veglia, se porte la croix, con storie di epopeia, des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on your thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on your thee.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Attawandaronk, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll call?
Thank you, Councillor Regima.
Here.
Thank you, Councillor Russell.
Here.
Councillor Pachariva. And I do see him present. He might be having technical difficulties. Councillor Bernay.
Here.
Councillor and Deputy Mayor McPherson.
Here.
Councillor Micklick.
Here.
Councillor Reimer.
Here.
Councillor Timmers.
Here.
Mayor Easton.
Present.
And we have quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And in addition, I would like to take a moment to welcome the staff that we have joining us today electronically. Chief Administrative Officer Mike Kirkopoulos, Director of Finance Administration and Innovation Lawrence Wagner, Director of Planning and Development Matt Bruder, Director of Community Services Shannon Mackay, Fire Chief Greg Hudson, Director of Economic Development and Communications Paul Deanne, Director of Public Works Dave Graham, Legislative Committee Coordinator Deanna Phillips, IT staff of course are in attendance. Moderating and clerking the meeting today, we have our Director of Legislative Services and Town Clerk, Julie Kirkelos. And also joining us this evening, Regional Councillor Foster from Niagara Region, and Matt Robinson, Director Scott Fraser, Financial Lead, and Heather Talbot, Financial and Special Projects Consultant from GO Implementation Office from the region of Niagara. As this is a virtual meeting, I will ask that we follow some procedures. Should there be a connection or service disruption for the chair, or if quorum is lost, the chair and our clerk will call a 10-minute recess to reconnect and to regain quorum. If quorum is lost, the meeting will be adjourned. If connection is lost from the chair, Deputy Mayor or the Vice Chair will resume the meeting. Once reconnection is achieved, the chair will assume their role. Each member of council who wishes to speak, press the raise hand feature on your video call, and the clerk will track our speakers list today, and then invite you to speak when I open it for comments or questions. When I finish reading a motion and announcing the mover and seconder, the clerk will then call out the vote by reading each member of council's name out loud. Please remember to take yourselves off mute during this portion of the meeting so that you can confirm if you are in support or opposed. And when not speaking, please remember to put yourselves on mute. Do members have a declared interest this evening? There being none, do members have any announcements? Please remember you have a limit of 3 items. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have no proclamations this evening, councillors, and we have no recognition or achievements this evening. We're now considering item 9.1, Special Council Minutes of December 20th, 2021. Do members of council have any questions? There being none, I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariva and seconded by Councillor Brunet that council approve the minutes of the following meetings of council, special council minutes of December 20th, 2021. Madam Clerk, would you please call out the vote?
Thank you, Councillor Brunet.
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yes.
Councillor Miklick,
Yes.
Councillor and Deputy Mayor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
and Mayor Easton,
Yes.
and that carries.
We have no delegations this evening. We move on to item 11. And this item is brought forward for consideration this evening, requested by Councillor Miklick. Item 1.3 of the Council Information Package, week ending January 7th, 2022, from the City of Welland. We request that regional policies be put in the official plan to support stable, in brackets, lower density residential neighborhoods. Councillor Miklick, do you wish to speak to this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just, I found this rather interesting, as I feel we have many neighborhoods within our town that are of subdivision sorts, that are of R1 density sorts. And I worry about, similar to what members of Welland have expressed, a change of, you know, what the fabric of a neighborhood looks like. And I'm fully supportive of increasing density where appropriate. The concern I have is where you have, let's say, a subdivision where, we have these 80-foot lots type, and the possibility of perhaps knocking a building down or knocking a home down and turning it into a 6 or 8 unit building of some sort. Or another hypothetical situation is like turning a home into a duplex and then perhaps building a garage in the back with another duplex housing possibly 4 units in a traditional subdivision setting. And the reason why it concerns me is that these subdivisions were designed once upon a time to be what they are. And in other areas, in other parts of town, you may have, or you do see, a 6-unit building cocktailed or within R1 zone properties. However, they're normally within areas with close access to public transit or within walking proximity to schools. And I'm just trying to find ways to protect protect the character of the existing neighborhoods as they currently are, and maintaining that control within a municipality without having the fear of the province always weighing on us and overriding any decisions that we make. So I'm curious if other members, I brought it forward to see what other members of councils what their thoughts were on this, and to see if I'm alone in feeling this way. And I'd welcome our director, Matt Bruder, to comment on this further if he'd like, just to provide some insight or context as to what this motion Welland brought forward actually is all about.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mikulik. And I see that Mr. Bruder has his hand up. Matt, would you like to go ahead, please?
I certainly would, Your Worship. Thank you. I think, definitely some good points in here. There's always a fine line to be achieved when you're looking at types of redevelopment in stable residential neighborhoods. In our own official plan, we have some policy guidance on that as well. As you're right, the existing character of the neighborhood does have to be considered. But, at the end of the day, even this, what's put forward, the verbiage in what came from Welland, talks about some opportunities for gentle intensification, I think, and lower density forms of intensification. I think, when you make reference necessarily to just single detached neighborhoods, is there an opportunity for some maybe varying building forms? Yes, there is. Do I think it should be, a big apartment building? Probably not. But I think as long as you're sympathetic to the character, there is opportunities for some infill that may still be suitable to the surroundings, instead of just, reducing or restricting rather, a neighborhood to only the specific types of housing that are already there. Because at the end of the day, there is, we can try to talk about the province and overarching direction. And, we sometimes, certain individuals, some people may be at odds with some of the things that are brought forward by the province, but they are some strategies to accommodate growth within varying degrees. This is why we have some of our other areas where we do look for opportunities for a more compact built form, so we can focus elsewhere outside of these stable residential neighborhoods. So again, I would definitely agree. Some good policy wording is never a bad thing to protect existing character, but there is a balance, and to think, that the means that the end of those means is simply just maintaining a strictly single detached natured subdivision might not always be the case. I think we have to open our minds up to a little bit of flexibility to accommodate, again, that gentle intensification, and maybe some types of built form that might be a little different, but still maintaining that compatibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bruder. I also see Deputy Mayor, Councillor Paul McPherson. Go ahead, Councillor.
Madam Mayor, and maybe a question of clarity through to Mr. Bruder. Is this the discussion that you've had with the various ward councillors with regards to R1 and the change in our potential change in our zoning bylaws to eliminate the need for let's say council review if a multi-unit development came through on what is currently an R1 zoning property?
Through you, Your Worship, I think there is some relation for sure. I'm not necessarily sure this is strictly regarding that, but on that, that is something that we're continuing to evaluate. We have received input in that regard. Is there an opportunity to keep that R1 and R2 zones separate still? For sure. And that's something we're still considering. So I think there is some relation to that, but I think, yeah, this was brought forward more by just the wording from the city of Welland, just pertaining to some information and some input out to the regional official plan that's being updated or overdone.
So through you, Madam Mayor, so that whole discussion, independent of what Welland is doing, is still up for debate and up for discussion with this council.
Through you, Your Worship, absolutely, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mikulik, are you satisfied?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I am satisfied. I just want to make those comments publicly known, and perhaps looking for guidance through you to Matt Bruder. Should we consider supporting this motion? Should we be thinking to create or craft our own motion to retain the ability to maintain the fabric of the neighborhoods that we currently appreciate?
Through Your Worship, I mean, I think of some of these things, when we're talking about the more gentler forms of intensification, when we're talking about protecting existing and stable residential neighborhoods, I would like to think, a lot of that falls on our local OP to get that done. I mean, the province sets out, or the region rather sets out some really higher level policy direction. I don't think necessarily it hurts because, as I did previously mention, we do already have wording in our existing official plan to that effect. Just to take into account the existing character, especially in the lower density, and the word stable is used when referring to these neighborhoods. So we've already got some policy guidance of our own, but again, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to support that.
Thank you very much.
I do appreciate that.
I'm sorry, Councillor McCulloch.
I do appreciate that response. I'm not opposed to semi-detached sort of homes. There's many times you drive by a neighborhood where you see semi-detached homes and it appears to be one home, and it does fit with the character of the neighborhood. My concern is the possibility of those speculating or investing in a community and not necessarily caring about the character of the neighborhood, but rather looking at the dollar and looking at maximizing profit within a building envelope, within a neighborhood. That's the concern I have. Using the LPAT or the OMB or the provincial planning policy to override local or regional planning policy. That's the concern I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brunei.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate Councillor Michalak bringing this forward. I think it's always good for us to have a good dialogue and good discussion. I'm just wondering, we have recently gone through a transition of a housing task force in Lincoln to a citizen advisory, where we have brought on board a number of people who have spent their career in housing and looking at development. I'm wondering, I realize, I certainly understand that this is just an advisory committee back to council, but I'm wondering if there is value in having the Housing and Homelessness Committee look at this and possibly report back after some dialogue at the committee level.
I'm going to ask Mr. Kirkopoulos to step in. Mike, could we have your comments, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. I think it's a positive idea. I think it's one that would be beneficial. I think when we look at the housing continuum, and that is, I think, monopolizing the airwaves on a number of fronts, it's important that we do talk to our advisory committees and hear about it. I'd add, I think, to the previous comments that planning keeps all aspects of every application and the planning process in mind, and they do so to support the community. I know council knows that look, feel, fitting into our existing community is also somewhat subjective, so I think staff is assessing those, and those things are paramount. But I think one of the things we're hearing loud and clear is also protecting our farmland. And so how does that happen? We can't grow out and build more single family homes. Simply saying no is not an option. So growing up is that alternative. And I think one person's interpretation of what is low density, as Mr. Bruder said, versus someone else's is very different. Now, understanding communities are different and all the things that come with it. I do think, though, getting back to the core question that Councillor Brunei raised, I think going to our affordable housing or our housing subcommittee would be ideal to hear what they have to say about this particular topic and those densities, albeit light densities that we're talking about.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brunei, did you have any other comments?
No, that's great, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the CEO's comments, and I hope it's something that we can consider moving forward. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Reimer.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. More a question of clarification to Director Bruder. A policy like we're discussing here that Welland is proposing, or the wording, when it goes to an LPAT situation, are these policies regional, provincial, municipal? Is there a hierarchy? Is it a collaborative effort? A collaborative view on it? My question being, does it matter if it's on a regional policy, if the provincial policy says something else?
Through you, your worship, that's a good question, Councillor. A lot of times when these local policies get developed, or the regional official plan, town official plan, all of these things, the province is definitely one that it goes through in terms of commentary. So there is that layer of review automatically, and if it really didn't conform to provincial policy, we'd probably hear from it by the province. But once everything goes through and it's approved, local policies do matter as well. They all have to be considered in concert with each other, typically, and usually they're supposed to all be aligned as much as possible with each other to facilitate those decisions. But just because there's a local policy that hones in a lot more on a stable residential neighborhood, is that going to be contrary to a provincial policy? Not necessarily, because there's provincial policy that speaks to compatibility too. It's just that balance is what we're looking for here. You need to not go too far in either direction, to be honest with you. At least that's my point of view. You have to maintain the opportunity, and I've said it a few times, for that kind of gentle form of intensification. We are experiencing growth while we try to focus it in certain areas. The whole town, especially the urban areas, because we don't have much of them, are subject to those. So again, it's that line between the two.
Thank you, Director Bruder. Thank you, Mayor Easton.
Councillor Reimer, your volume is quite low, and it's just a little difficult to hear you. If you could turn it up so we don't miss
I will,
questions.
excuse me, I will try my best.
Thank you very much. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Thank you very much, councillors. I have a motion moved by Councillor Mikulik and seconded by Councillor Timmers, that council receive and file as information the following agenda item 11.1 of correspondence. Item 1.3 of Council Information Package Week ending January the 7th, 2022 from the City of Welland Re. Request that regional policies be put in the official plan to support stable, lower density residential neighborhoods. Madam Clerk, would you please call out the vote?
Councillor Brune,
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yes.
Councillor Miklik,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton.
Support.
That carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're now drawn, Councillor, to item number 12, presentations. We have one presentation this evening. And before we begin, the presentation is approximately 15 minutes. And I will ask that council proceed with a majority vote to request the extension for the presentation until completed. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rajima and seconded by Councillor Russell. If you're in agreement. Yes, that council extends the presentation and speaking time for Matt Robinson, Director, Go Implementation Office, until completed. Madam Clerk, would you please call the vote?
Just a raise of hands, thank you, will suffice, and I will make sure that everybody, that's great. Thank you, that carries.
Thank you very much. Our presentation this evening is from Matt Robinson, Implementation Director, Region of Niagara, regarding transit consolidation, moving transit forward in Niagara, report AD 01-22. Also in attendance is Scott Fraser, Financial Lead, and Heather Talbot, Financial and Special Projects Consultant to assist. Once the presentation is complete, Council will transition directly into the report and then take questions from members of Council. The Chief Administrative Officer would like to provide some introductory remarks before we begin. So I'll ask the CAO to go ahead at this time.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and good evening to members of council and to our delegates that are here this evening. I do want to thank Matt, Scott, and Heather. They have fielded numerous questions over the last month or so from myself, from Lawrence, and from Dave Graham, who are kind of our internal team working on transit and moving the transit file forward. And so I think a lot of the questions that council may have had may already have been answered. But nonetheless, I do want to thank Matt, Heather, and Scott Once this presentation is completed, we will be dealing with the staff report. And so we can deal with those two things together. We do encourage members of council to wait until both presentations from Mr. Robinson, as well as a brief introduction of our report are completed. And then I think collectively, between the six of us, we will do our best to answer any of the questions council may have. Madam Mayor, in your introduction, you really talked about the purpose of what we're here to decide this evening, and the fact that this report and the associated presentations really provide council an update on the current state and status of the transit governance proposal, including and highlighting some recent council decisions, an analysis of some of the potential benefits and impacts to us here in Lincoln and the residents here, and finally seeks council endorsement on creating a consolidated transit system within Niagara region. You'll see in staff's report that we highlighted who has already gone and who has made decisions. There have been what I would say 7 yeses and now 8, including Pelham, since the time this report was published, and one no, which has been publicized, and that is Welland. For all intents and purposes, it's a no, but nonetheless, we have reached that triple majority. And so I will turn it over to Mr. Robinson and his team to take us through their presentation, and then we will take you through a couple of highlights of our staff report. So thank you.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you very much. I know there's been a lot of talk about this, and there's certainly no shortage of material, but it is important that we stay true to the purpose of this evening's meeting. So I'll call on Matt Robinson now to and his team to make the tonight's presentation.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Hi, Matt.
Good evening. Try and find my, oops, no, I don't want that. Sorry.
You're testing our eyes here, Mr. Robinson.
There we go. My apologies. There we have it. You should see the screen all right. Julie, yes. I can see you. Is everything good?
Everything.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, and it's a pleasure to be back here this evening. As Mr. Kirkopoulos said, the purpose of tonight's presentation and the associated report is to seek council's endorsement of the final transit governance proposal to create a single consolidated transit system for Niagara. We certainly appreciate the tremendous leadership and engagement shown by all of our municipalities in this important transit discussion. So tonight represents the culmination of years of work by many who came before us. This is a significant decision for this council and all of Niagara. All of Niagara's CAOs have invested considerable time and energy into reaching a consensus proposal they believe strikes the fairest, most reasonable approach to transit consolidation in Niagara. I'd be remiss not to recognize your CAO, Mike Kirkopoulos, who's been a tremendous champion in this regard amongst his peers in leading this work to where we are today. I also wanted to recognize Mayor Easton and Regional Councillor Rob Foster tonight for their ongoing support of transit at the region. With Regional Council having passed the proposal 24-1, it's now up to Niagara's municipalities to determine if Niagara takes this next step forward in moving transit forward. So to guide tonight's discussion, we'll remind Council what we're trying to achieve, and then we'll move to why and examine the benefits of a consolidated system. Then we'll look quickly at how and the plan to do it. From there, we'll examine the who, both in terms of who shaped future decisions and govern, as well as who shaped the proposal and how it evolved considerably over time and through significant municipal and community consultation. There's a tremendous amount of municipal staff, political champions, and passionate community advocates who have done all the heavy lifting to get us to this decision tonight. And we'll finish up with the when, the timelines, and what the road ahead looks like for the triple majority process itself. So let's look at some reasons why Niagara should integrate. The vision for a single consolidated transit system in Niagara has been years, arguably decades, in the making. The proposal before you seeks to create a single consolidated transit system governed by a commission that would deliver transit with a region-wide lens for all of Niagara. One that would seamlessly connect to the GO network, both bus and train, at Niagara's GO stations. One that would ensure sustainable connectivity to all corners of Niagara and beyond, ensuring new developments are connected in ways that meet their needs and bring our towns and cities closer together. And lastly, the vision is for a reliable, consistent, and integrated system that will transform mobility, independence, and growth in Niagara for generations to come, with consistent coverage and operating hours. What Council won't see in this presentation is the enormous amount of studies, detail, and analysis that lays out what transit in Niagara was and what it is now. That is all very well documented, and extensive links are in the regional report. The benefits of a single consolidated transit system are numerous. We've heard from your community and others over the last 24 months, as well as through countless letters of support and delegations. A common theme we've heard throughout is that the benefits are very public-facing and tangible. A single unified system for all 12 municipalities will pool our resources and optimize them to maximize service for our residents. It will create equity for all communities, enable access by residents where mobility may be limited or unavailable due to municipal or jurisdictional boundaries. Enhanced and expanded service creates what riders want from transit: reliability, consistency, and frequency. This expansion and enhanced access drives economic development and job retention and attraction. We've heard numerous testimonials across multiple councils from dozens of employers, business advocates like Niagara's Chambers of Commerce, and employee and social advocates like the Employment Help Center, Niagara Poverty Reduction Network, and Niagara Native Friendship Centers. Only under one system can we have a single $3 fare. That means $3 wherever you go, wherever you live in Niagara. That means the cost of taking intermunicipal trips, for example, getting to the St. Catherine Hospital or to your job in Grimsby, will be half the $6 it costs now. The environmental benefits to transit are certainly well documented, but the move to innovative, entirely greener transit is only achieved as a single agency. Niagara has an enormous and active student population who are significant and valued users of transit. A single system benefits not only post-secondary students, but also younger students who gain more freedom and independence. Getting our next generation comfortable and reliant on transit as their primary mode of transportation is a key driver in youth retention and system growth. And lastly, an integrated single transit system will be fairly funded, create significant social and economic value to Niagara, and be governed by Niagara's community leaders to ensure the future of Niagara's transit growth is sustainable, reliable, and positioned for success. It's only through the creation of a single transit agency for all of Niagara that these outcomes can be fully and successfully achieved. So how do we get there? The Niagara Transit Governance Study recommended the full commission model as the optimal governance structure for Niagara and was endorsed by the municipalities as part of the Round 1 Roadshow. This model will bring about the right amount of autonomy and flexibility to allow transit in Niagara to reach its full potential. 3 core strategies for governance, service, and finances have been developed through extensive consultation with the community and our municipalities. The commission would be established with a transitional board of 15 elected officials from the municipal and regional councils. Supporting the commission will be an advisory committee of 20 public representatives bringing key perspectives from accessibility to post-secondary institutions, business, and healthcare. Lincoln Council will be asked to appoint either a regional or local councillor as your representative on the commission board, as well as a citizen appointee to represent you on the advisory committee. Service standards were developed to ensure line of sight for municipalities in how their services will grow over time. Niagara's transit professionals agreed as a first priority, the commission would need to standardize operating hours. This was seen as a key driver to transit growth and increased ridership through consistency and reliability over the first 2 years. From there, focus would pivot to combining specialized and on-demand services. This is where significant efficiencies can be found, where currently jurisdictional boundaries prohibit efficient ride sharing, customer pickups, and optimal routing from occurring. Combining these 2 services enables a significant amount of capacity to be added to the system if it operates as a single integrated agency. And funding all of this is a user pays principle based on transit service hours in each community. Services realized, both current and future, will be directly allocated for those costs incurred in each community. Using 12 special levies, one for each municipality, services delivered within a community will be allocated to that municipality's regional levy. There will be no more municipal charges for transit as of January 1st, 2023. Regional taxes will pay for the service in each municipality. The existing intermunicipal levy for NRT will remain on region-wide assessment, but the net new services inherited from the municipalities will be the new portions allocated based on service hours. The plan accounts for future operating and capital growth and is directly linked to the service plan. It also introduces a capital reserve strategy to ensure that the growth laid out in the service plan can be realized, and eliminates the use of provincial gas tax to subsidize operating rates so those funds can be used to fund future capital expansion in your community. Significant consultation has occurred over the last 2 years to get us to where we are today. Our municipal communications teams jointly developed the website movingtransitforward.ca, where over 2,200 resident responses from all 12 municipalities were received, with an overwhelming majority in favor of the proposed path forward. One of the key aspects of the consultation was 2 rounds of municipal council consultation. That's over 24 council meetings for the project team, excluding the 3rd round of these presentations to present the final proposal and consider the vote. The municipal councils were key to this entire proposal. From the outset, way back at the early stages of the recommendations of the study, to the development of the financial strategy, the governance model, and the service plan, our municipal councils have directly shaped the evolution of the proposal. The CAO Governance Steering Committee, during 10 half-day workshops over 2021, weighed numerous options and angles at every piece of feedback and arrived at what they believed to be the best proposal for Niagara. The Linking Niagara Transit Committee was unanimous in its recommendation to Council of these recommendations and to proceed with this consideration vote this evening. I know over the last number of weeks, I've responded to a number of direct inquiries from councillors around this horseshoe, and I hope that additional information has helped you obtain a clear picture of what we're trying to achieve. So what comes next? Tonight's report seeks council approval as part of the triple majority process. Triple majority is achieved by a majority of regional council, a majority of municipal councils, whose combined population represents a majority of Niagara's electors. With regional council having passed the bylaw, the first criteria has been achieved. Now the remaining municipal councils must consider the bylaw. You can see the schedule of meetings on the slide indicating we're down to our last 3, including this evening. It's accurate to say the criteria for triple majority has already been achieved. However, we remain committed to ensuring that each council has an opportunity to make their views and votes known prior to any communication occurring about the results of the process. Regional Council has requested those consideration votes occur by January 31st of this year. Once the municipal consideration process is concluded and the transition begins, the Commission's assumption of full operational control of the service will occur on January 1st, 2023, bringing with it well-documented transformative benefits. So on behalf of the CAO Governance Steering Committee, the project team, and the Linking Niagara Transit Committee, we strongly believe that the time for this transformative step forward is now. The benefits are compelling, the comprehensive service and financial plans are in place, the extensive collaboration has allowed for an inclusive and representative proposal. And with all of those pieces successfully and sequentially in place, the decision is now before Council and our municipalities to decide if this represents a successful path for moving transit forward in Niagara. So with that, Madam Mayor, I will pass things back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll move on to the next phase here. I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson and seconded by Councillor Reimer that Council receive and file for information the presentation from Matt Robinson, GO Implementation Director, regarding transit consolidation, moving transit forward in Niagara. Madam Clerk, would you please call out the vote?
Thank you, Councillor Brunet.
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yes.
Councillor Miklik,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor, Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Support.
and that carries. We can transition to the report.
Okay, so just for the benefit of the public, the report that we just was presented to us by Matt Robinson, referred to PW 55-2021. We're finished with that document now. We voted to receive and file that for information. We're now moving on to the report from the Lincoln staff. Transit consolidation, moving transit forward in Niagara. The report number is AD-01-22. Now, on this, Mr. CAO, I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly. I believe you had, you were indicating that there would be a short report by staff. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think, Mr. Robinson did a great job, I think, taking it through the various elements of where we're at, some of the historic pieces, the actions to date. So I do want to speak briefly about what else is included in this report in terms of that local perspective, some of the letters we've received and a little bit of the analysis. And then definitely I'll turn it over to Director Wagner, maybe to touch a little bit on the finance piece, and then we will be open to council questions.
Okay, go ahead.
So through you, Madam Mayor, and to members of council, I think, as I just said, really want to hone in on maybe the local perspective as it relates to on-demand transit and where we find ourselves right now. One of the appendices that council will see is letters and endorsements from some of our local businesses. There are 7 local businesses that are included, as well as some businesses that represent Niagara on a broader basis. The YMCA of Niagara, Pathstone, the Niagara Poverty Reduction Network. But I think if I go to those, overwhelmingly, most of our community is in favor in terms of what transit can provide. And I think when they speak to the various elements of it, they tackle it on a few sides. One, from the economic development perspective, in terms of getting talent, getting youth, getting students to the businesses so that those businesses can operate. And then I think on the other side of it, we hear a lot around social and community services access, public health, and the health elements, as well as the environmental benefits. And so I think when you look at that, when you look at some of the other analysis the staff have included in the report, I think we really speak to why, from a staff perspective, we believe that this is an important report. It's an important initiative that we hope council will support. Just briefly, a little bit on the financial element of it before I turn it over to Director Wagner. We do talk a little bit about Lincoln's municipal transit budget as it currently sits, which is $175,000. And I think, as Director Robinson highlighted, that will be uploaded to the region's special transit levy. And this upload will occur in 2023. When you look at the report, we've also done a little bit of an analysis in terms of if we were to run our own transit system. That was one of the questions that was posed to us. And we've done a little bit of a comparison in terms of what the regional costs are, which are 1.4 million, versus if the town was to take a run at a non-consolidated transit system. And what we've calculated that comes in on is greater than 1.7 million. So we've done some of the analysis. We've looked at different models. A number of councillors will recall that last term, Lincoln was one of the early adopters around transit. We ran our own U-Link transit service, which I think we all described at the very least was a very basic and an incremental service, but one that really, I think when we looked at some of the stories and when we talked to our seniors community and others, was incredibly impactful. And I think we realized, albeit not for the entire community, which is still very car focused at this particular point in time, as our community ages, as we look at residents in our community, it becomes an imperative tool for them to get around town and for them to deal with things like social isolation. So I'll turn it over to our Director of Finance if he's got any additional comments, and then absolutely we are open to answer any council questions.
All right, Mr. Wagner, please.
So just that Mike actually encapsulated pretty much everything I wanted to cover. There is a slight cost increase when we upload it to the region. That will cover off the additional hours of service, which I think is fair and reasonable. As Mike mentioned, if we decided to or wanted to try to do this on our own, the cost would be prohibitive and actually cost the taxpayer significantly more than uploading the cost to the region. I do see some benefit through economies of scale and the like when you join with other partners, because you can offset and defray costs, you can share costs, expenses. If revenues decline in one area, you're not the one to actually eat all of the shortfall. The region obviously has bigger pockets than a local area municipality. So from a financial perspective, it seems like a good approach and probably something that I would support. That's it.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Wagner. I just want to check back in this question period that we're going into now. That we're going into now, I just want to make certain if there's questions that anyone has for Mr. Robinson, we're going to allow those questions to be asked at the same time. All right. Well, maybe we'll just, I'm going to try it this way and we'll see what happens. If you have any questions for Mr. Robinson, let's look at those first. If you have questions for Matt, please raise your hand and we'll try this. We may get to a point where we're going back and forth, but we'll try this first. So we're dealing with the report 55. Just a minute.
The presentation.
Yeah, what was the presentation number? Oh, it is report AD 01-22. Okay, Councillor Njima, you were the first hands up. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. So my question is a little bit more detail, I think, than this entire discussion. It's a very high level discussion, but it's an important question that's been raised in the past. And I think it's going to be important to a lot of people in terms of how the consolidated transit system payment works. So I had a landlord contact me a number of times, and she had a tenant in her basement, and they offer this unit up for a low price to assist because they want to contribute. The landlord offers it at quite a good price to her tenant. The tenant had lower income, so did not have a credit card. Nor did she have a car, hence the need for transit. They live in a rural area, so the landlord, out of the goodness of her heart, would drive the tenant first to the bank and then to, I think, Town Hall to purchase passes for the on-demand transit system. And because the tenant did not have much cash flow, she couldn't afford to buy many passes at one time. So they needed to do this weekly. And the cash flow issue was also the reason that she could not purchase a Visa debit card. She could, but it was sort of pointless because she would have to reload it weekly anyway, which meant she needed to get a weekly ride to the store. So the bottom line to them, and I see the point, is that the tenant is a very good example of a person that this transit system is in place to serve, being the on-demand transit system in particular. And she was very happy to have it, but if not for her landlord giving her a ride to the store and the bank every week, she would have trouble getting her passes. So her understanding is that a debit card could not be used to purchase the passes. So has that changed? Can a debit card be used to purchase the passes? And if not, will they be able to use a debit card in the future?
Okay, Matt, what kind of accommodations can we expect in the future?
So through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillors, there's a couple of items here. So maybe first of all, with regard to the specifics of payment. So yes, at the current time, given the current provider and the current system, cash is not accepted on vehicle. This is for a number of reasons, given the small nature of the vehicles and the lack of partition or barrier between them in terms of accepting cash. That being said, each of the municipalities who provide front counter service to purchase passes, some can accommodate debit, some can accommodate cash only. But that transaction which occurs to purchase the card is really up to the ability of our frontline providers to be able to do at the current time. So if one municipality's front counter can accommodate debit, that can be reconciled. Others may not have that service at their front cash. That being said, going forward, we're looking to expand the number of locations in which the purchase of cards for NRT On Demand can be obtained. And we're working with community partners, not just our municipalities, which are the ones currently providing that, but going forward, we're looking to expand where and how those passes can be purchased by the community. And maybe lastly, the introduction of some type of future low-income pass is likely one of those things that under a single commission, there will be an examination of what and how that demographic is able to acquire some type of low-income pass. Right now, there are a number of different passes that exist across our municipalities with varying degrees of discounts in terms of the fares. Under the single commission, I would envision that the commission will make and take a position on what level of discount and ensuring that there is a single discounted fare for low-income users across the region. Again, under a single agency, that can be done. One pass, one demographic, one discount, consistent across all municipalities going forward. So happy to take any other questions, Councillor, but I hope that at least on those three different fronts, it gives you some focus in terms of how the individual or circumstance that you provided might be accommodated going forward.
Thank you. I do have a question of clarification. No, I appreciate that. That's good. Good focus on the future and some other things that could be happening. But I guess I should have been a little bit more clear. And that's the question is will a person be able to purchase passes through the app or online with a debit card? So she needed a ride because she lived in a rural community. She needed a ride to go to the bank to get her cash and then to go to the town hall to pick up her tickets or wherever. She wanted to avoid all that by purchasing them online or through the app, but she couldn't use a debit card. She didn't have a Visa debit card. She didn't have the cash flow to do that. She didn't have a credit card because she doesn't have credit. So will she be able to eventually use a debit card through the app or online to purchase her passes? And if not, I would appreciate it if you'd keep that into consideration and somehow install that option in the future.
Mr. Robinson.
So through you, Madam Mayor, I think at the current time through the app, that is not available, but going forward, that's the type of improvement and expansion that we're looking to do with the current provider to ensure that transit is accessible to everyone and anyone, no matter their method of payment. So I think that's a takeaway for us in terms of something we've already identified as a future expansion to make that as accessible for individuals using simply debit cards, trying to use that app as their primary method of hailing transit.
Great, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Robinson. Just a few points of clarification. One, regarding the debt of the big three being transferred to the commission. And forgive me, I only have the PDF in front of me. It was page 50 on our PDF, also Schedule B. Could you just give me some information on how that debt will be utilized within the commission model? Will it be exclusively paid back by those big three municipalities that have accrued it to date, or will it be spread over all municipalities?
So through you, Madam Mayor, I'd actually like to call on Ms. Talbot, who is leading and has developed the financial model. So perhaps Heather, you could respond to Councillor Russell with regard to the conventional transit systems and their debt as it is uploaded.
Certainly. Through you, Madam Mayor. Originally, when we compiled the debt, it was up until 2020. And through that, the existing debt up to 2020 was allocated based on service hours. So again, the majority of the debt, 85%, was going back to the big three. Within the MTA agreement, we're looking at alternative allocations based on debt that's been incurred in 2021 or 2022. And specifically looking at, depending on how that debt is, how much debt there is, and where it resides, it would be, we're looking at ways to actually allocate it back to those municipalities that incurred the debt.
Okay, thank you. Point of clarification on that, but you're also looking at allocating it to other municipalities as well, or just those ones?
Well, the previous debt from 2020 and before was allocated based on service hours. So it was still being majority, it was being allocated back. But then through the MTA agreements and because of the assets that the debt has been incurred on, we're looking at, we'd like to negotiate through the MTA that debt is actually staying with the assets and would be allocated back to the municipalities that incurred the debt.
Okay. Thank you for that response. And again, I look forward to hopefully getting that in writing somewhere down the road. My next follow-up, again, to Mr. Robinson. Throughout, and again, forgive me, I'm still using the PDF. There's a few mentions of the GO train site for Lincoln, and also in the previous presentation of Grimsby, there's also mention of the Grimsby GO train station. I'm just wondering if you could give us an update on where we both stand on the GO train. And the reason I ask is that I've heard some iterations from the Grimsby Council that there was a fear that by not voting for this, that they would be losing their GO train station as it was being proposed. I'm just wondering if you can give us an update on that.
Well, I think it's fair to say, through you, Madam Mayor, with regard to the station and the station location, the other piece of work that our team does is, of course, working to have service installed across 4 sites in Niagara. So new service in Beamsville, new service in Grimsby, as well as the expansion of service at St. Catharines and Niagara Falls. So what I said to the town of Grimsby was that in the early days, MTO made it quite clear to the region of Niagara and its municipal partners that having effective first and last mile connective seamless transit was one of the key factors in GO expansion to our community. And I think that has been the premise upon which this entire initiative to create a single consolidated system was based upon. And I said this when I was before St. Catharines Council. Ultimately, this is the genesis of that commitment of Niagara to say, we want GO expanded to Niagara. And the reciprocal from the province was, you need an effective transit system that can drive ridership to the GO network. And that means effective first and last mile connections. So that's been on the table from the province for many, many years and was an underpinning of the entire GO proposal that we did put forward to the province way back in 2015.
Okay, so thank you, Matt. And as a point of clarification, so again, both presentations indicate that we're both getting a GO station.
So through you, Madam Mayor, I think it's fair to say that at the current time, the Beamsville Station has future potential station status with the province. And our office is working closely with the town, with town staff, as well as third-party interested parties as to what a proposal for a Beamsville station might look like. Beamsville has the benefit of having status within the 2011 EA that establishes a specific parcel and a specific location for a future site. Now it's about delivering on that site in partnership with the town, in partnership with the development community, to be able to then realize a station at that location.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. And my last question, on page 81 of the PDF, there's a reference to the 7.3% increase. I'm just going to go back just to get the correct verbiage. And it said that there was also some offsetting costs that will help reduce the overall burden of that 7.38% increase. Could you give us an update of what the net increase will be for the taxpayers?
So through you, Madam Mayor, I'll go back to Ms. Talbot with regard to the overall 7.3 across Niagara, and what that looks like in terms of refining those numbers as we get through 2022 and into 2023 fiscal year.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to look up the levy piece. The 7.3% on the levy is actually, because there's going to be an offset at the municipal budget, the 7.3 is an increase on the regional budget. So the net impact is 0 on the 7.3. Sorry, no, that is, yeah, the 7.3, but there is a 0.5% increase that's due to the capital reserve, as well as the removal of the gas tax from the operating cost. So the current local municipal transit costs will be offset from the regional transit levy, but by the establishment of the capital reserve and then the removal of the gas tax from operating to help the capital reserve, there'll be a 0.5 on the regional levy.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Russell. Deputy Mayor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Matt, Heather, and Scott for their journey and coming back in front of us tonight. And I want to particularly thank Matt for the effort that he put into a lengthy, detailed email response back to Mike Kirkopoulos back on the 14th of December to questions that I had put forward around the proposed regional transit model and its impact on the residents of Lincoln. So in that response, Matt clearly explained the costs and challenges of going it alone, so to speak, if we were to take ownership of an on-demand type transit system in Lincoln. He also went on to outline the additional services our residents would enjoy that are not currently available. And as we see in the report, there are many. And finally, Matt outlined the big 3/REST model detailing the costing breakdown as it will apply to St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, Welland, and the on-demand municipalities. So it really quite nicely laid it out in each one of those categories to me anyway, to really answer the questions that I had. And much of the detail of that email is found in tonight's report under the Finance, Legal, and Staff Comments section. So appreciate that, Matt. I know, you mentioned in your email that it took you quite a while to draft that, and I appreciate the effort. I feel, Matt, you and your team, really have listened to the concerns that we had during the initial meetings going back, I don't know, a year or so ago. For me, the issues of costing and of governance have been addressed, moving away from some of the original proposed models that you brought forward a year ago. So I have a couple of questions, and they're probably looking forward type questions. So I see mention of expansion of the on-demand fleet in tonight's report, and I'm thinking about a resident of Lincoln taking a on-demand bus to a Niagara Falls or to a St. Catharines or a Welland and trying to get back from that visit. And I'm wondering if you could comment on, will there be on-demand vehicles assigned to the St. Catharines area, the Niagara Falls area, Welland, to transport Lincoln residents back to Lincoln?
Okay, that's the first question, Matt.
So through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor McPherson, it's important to note that the transfer point at St. Catharines is to ensure that the existing conventional system prevails. So a trip from, say, your home in Lincoln, you wouldn't stay on the same on-demand vehicle straight from Lincoln through to Niagara Falls. you would look to transfer onto, say, Route 5055 at St. Catharines. Take that trip likely right into Niagara Falls and then transfer. So it's important to make that distinction. Where we mean expansion of fleet and expansion of connectivity is adding new and more points of interest in St. Catharines. So in the future, it's not likely that there's a single point of contact at the transfer hub, which is the current terminal. But going forward, you would look to have things like different hospitals and other sort of high order community points of interest where NRT trips, NRT on-demand trips would originate in Lincoln and go to perhaps 3 or 4 different destinations within St. Catharines. But ultimately, the intention of this is not to bring riders straight from Lincoln across multiple municipalities to their ultimate destination.
And thank you, Matt, and through you, Madam Mayor, I should have been clearer in my question, and I understand the transferring piece. I guess my question or my concern is that as that resident transfers back through to the point where they pick up an on-demand vehicle, what would the waiting time be for that vehicle? And not necessary to have an answer tonight, but that is my concern, is that a resident may be sitting waiting at that initial transfer point for some time until another vehicle comes into town. So just as a takeaway, is there a plan? And the first thing that came to me was potentially having on-demand vehicles in that area of that initial point that Lincoln residents would enter into St. Catharines or Niagara Falls or Welland. If I may, a second question.
Just a second. I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor. Matt, did I hear your voice? Did you have a response?
Through you, Madam Mayor, maybe just quickly to the councillor. The good news is that we've introduced back in September pre-booking. So for that Lincoln rider who's on their way from Niagara Falls into St. Catharines trying to get home to Lincoln, on that journey on the NRT bus or the new commission's large 40-foot bus, you can hail your pre-booked trip to say, I'm planning to be at the terminal in 15 minutes. That vehicle is there waiting for you. So the fact that we have pre-booked trips in the on-demand service allows for that guarantee to ensure that there is a vehicle meeting me on my transfer and I'm not left waiting.
Beautiful.
Okay, number 2.
Madam Mayor, so through you, I wonder, Matt, if you can comment on the potential for the on-demand system moving into a non-contracted service, potentially, and also the branding that we would possibly see on if we were to move that way, and would it look and feel like a Niagara regional van, if you will?
So through you, Madam Mayor and Councillor, you qualified this with future-looking things. So now we're into future-looking speculation a bit here. But what I can say is that there will be a single brand for the new commission. Whether or not the existing brands prevail beyond, say, year 1, we would look to the commission to make that determination. With regard to delivering that service in-house or whether it remains contracted, ultimately that decision is going to be made by the commission, but the financial model and the service plan both account for that service being brought in-house, delivered by presumably ATU members who deliver the rest of our conventional service. And then going forward, that would be, and there are a lot of benefits that come with having that on-demand service delivered in-house as part of a larger umbrella of transit, a suite of transit services. So as I said, the service plan contemplates that and prefers moving the current on-demand model to in-house. And as the financial plan has a capital reserve, it also enables for the capital to be realized to purchase the vehicles, because under a contracted service, those vehicles are entirely owned and operated in our model by the service contractor. But in the future, that capital reserve allows for the control of the commission to acquire those assets and deploy in-house drivers so that the entire fleet, where the commission deems necessary, could be delivered under the same service and certainly under the same banner.
Thank you, Matt. Madam Mayor, just a quick comment about the report, and I think it is a outstanding report that the staff has put together, and one that I hope the residents of the town of Lincoln will read, because I think it captures everything that I think we've brought forward as questions and answers, them in very good detail. So compliments to the staff for the report that they put out tonight. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Mikulik?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Matt. Thank you for coming. I really do appreciate transit. I think what we currently have now within Lincoln is fantastic and is working well. I'm just curious, I'm concerned about the finance with regards to the $3 fare across the region. So let me get this straight. How, hypothetically speaking, how would I get a ride? What would a ride look like to get from, say, Charles Daly Park or, the border of St. Catharines to somewhere like Lowbanks?
Lowbanks.
Like that look like?
Lowbanks up in
Down, outside of Wainfleet.
Dunville? In
Yeah.
the Dunville area.
Yeah.
Is that included in the master plan here, Matt?
So through you, Madam Mayor, I'll go with Lowbanks on the edge of Wainfleet so that we can ensure that that's within our service area. Dunville, not at the current time within our service area or that of NRT On Demand. But it's fair to say that a trip from Charles Daly Park to a campsite in Wainfleet, all within the service area, despite crossing over multiple municipalities going forward, is a $3 trip per ride, per rider. So it's something in the future that can occur once that revenue is reconciled across multiple agencies, which cannot be done at the current time.
And just to follow up to that hypothetical, I'm trying to understand, because originally I thought, similar to Councillor McPherson, it was a direct door-to-door drive, with the current system that we have. So catching this from Grimsby, say Casablanca, to the Peace Bridge in Fort Erie, what would that ride look like?
So through you, Madam Mayor, again, we're speculating a bit in terms of I have to use the current system as my baseline, although the future service may look something different. But at the current time, at least for the next 18 months, a trip from Casablanca is on NRT On Demand into St. Catharines, into the terminal. From there, it is a journey to the Niagara Falls, Niagara Square, or the Costco, if you will. And from there, it's on to the Fort Erie Link route. So you're on from the Fort Erie Link route into Fort Erie at Municipal Square. Fort Erie has on-demand transit, and that transfer takes you to the Peace Bridge from there. So not implying that is a short trip. There are a few transfers involved there, but I think going forward under a single system, some of those trips may be more direct. For example, the on-demand system that is currently in place in Fort Erie may be extended all the way into South Niagara Falls, in which case making that trip from the transfer point at Costco straight to the Peace Bridge may be in a single vehicle. So going forward, there's likely a lot fewer transfers under a single system, but it doesn't mean that transfers won't exist as we start to go between the periphery and some of those core municipalities where larger buses servicing more of the municipality and more population exist in places like St. Catharines and Niagara Falls on that journey to the Peace Bridge.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. Another question to both Matt Robinson or Heather Talbot and to Lawrence Wagner. Like when doing the modeling, the $1.4 million regional estimate, that was based on what data? What year data? What ridership, usership data?
So through you, Madam Mayor, I'll defer to Heather to answer that first, and she can move from there to Mr. Wagner if necessary.
Well, I don't know whether Mr. Wagner would have had any input into that, but we'll check that. Heather, could we, there you are. Go ahead, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So we did all the modeling on 2020, the pre-COVID data. It was on the 2020 budget, so how each municipality was set up to with full services. And then when we looked to forecast, we wanted to ensure that as we recover from COVID, we have the necessary dollars to do the same service. So basically, we looked at 2020 as our start point, and then we applied inflationary growth to those estimates to align with our 2024 numbers.
Just and that was ridership data as well?
Through you, Madam Mayor. We do have ridership data, but the ridership didn't really factor in as much to the information because we looked at net operating costs. And what most municipalities did through COVID is their net operating budget was the same, but they really weren't able to establish as much service because the revenues dropped. So within the region, I can speak to the region specifically, we have a lot of services that support the student ridership. So when COVID hit and the students were no longer riding the bus, we were able to pivot on that service, ensure that we still had our base service, and we didn't run into any financial challenges. As the students come back and ridership comes back, it allows for those incremental services to come back into our baseline service without any fluctuations to our net operating budget.
Okay. Thank you for that response. The reason why I asked through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Wagner was there was an estimate of $1.7 million. What data was that extrapolated from? Was that from today's usership, or was that the same current timeframe usership that Heather Talbot referred to? Okay,
Mr. Wagner, were you involved in calculating the 1.7 million?
No, through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Micklick. No, ma'am, I wasn't. It was provided from the region. If you're talking about if we were to take on the transit on our own. So I'll defer this to Matt Robinson or Heather.
Would you like Ms. Talbot to address the 1.7 million, Councillor?
If she could, if we're comparing apples to apples, like if we're comparing the data within the same timeframes.
Okay.
An accurate usership in relation to cost estimate.
Certainly, through you, Madam Mayor. So basically where the 1.7 is coming from is you have your regional allocation, which is the $1 million. Right now, what you are looking at is the regional contribution to your on-demand is substantial, and the local portion of your on-demand, including gas tax, is about $315,000 a year. In order to operate your own on-demand, you would need at least 3 vehicles. It suggests 3 to 4. Each vehicle to operate within your boundaries is about $250,000. So you're looking anywhere from 3 to 4 vehicles, which would be about $750,000 to $1 million, and then you'd back out, roughly $200,000 in gas tax, and that's where the difference of roughly $400,000 is coming from.
Okay, thank you. I'm just, I just have concerns about this in terms of if it takes off, is there, like, if it actually is used more than perhaps we forecasted it to be used. And the cost, the driver has a cost, the vehicle has a cost, and gas has a cost. And I'm sure that all of those numbers have changed just within the last 6 months. So the estimated cost to the municipality, I'm not sure how accurate that is in today's dollar relative to the dollars of, let's say, last year when this was first brought forward. So those are the concerns I have at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mikulik. Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Mary Sim. Sorry, I put my hand down instead of unmuting myself. Thank you very much, Matt and Heather. Great report. Really happy you were coming back this evening. A lot of questions have been asked. You went back to the drawing table many times to bring us the answers that we were looking for and the information, and it was always very well done and presented, and I thank you for that. Very excited tonight about this. You know, years ago, it seems many years ago, we started ULink and then Niagara Regional Transit. And today I was having a conversation with a senior resident, and I had questions around the ability to pay as well, which I think you addressed that. You're looking at that's in your on your radar, so that's good. You had said something about the transferring, and I had questions around that when you're transferring, about there possibly being more locations added than just the terminal. Can you just elaborate? And did I hear you correctly on that point, that there could be other drop-off pickup locations?
Yes, and through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Timmers, yes, that is our intention, and we call them points of interest. So basically in your NRT on-demand drop-down menu, there are specific locations. So rather than typing in a specific address, you can drop down to specific points of interest. Right now, when you're heading to St. Catharines, there's a single point of interest, that is the St. Catharines terminal. In the future, under a single operating entity, we would look to add more points of interest along the borders of where NRT on demand meets the conventional systems. And as I said, one off the top of my head, without being overly committal to the future commission, is highly likely to be the St. Catharines Hospital. So as residents are looking to come to appointments at the St. Catharines Hospital from anywhere in West Niagara, they could look, instead of going into the terminal and returning back on a St. Catharines bus, under a single entity, it would make more sense for someone to go directly to the hospital. We're not suggesting that that could turn into a dozen different points of interest, but at least more than the current transfer point into the terminal. So I don't want to speculate too much on what those future points of interest might be, but suffice to say that we are looking at what those might be, even in the short term, in terms of being able to connect residents at those high volume community interest points, and then look to expand those in the future.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Matt. I personally am really looking forward to this system, and I'm very supportive of it. You know, this is about social equity, people being able to access healthcare, people who are isolated. Transportation has always been a barrier to many, many people in our community, to the point that some people actually leave our community because there is no transportation. They have to move to a bigger center, city, so they can get around. So, you know, the social determinants of health here are all going to be impacted in a very positive way, and our community as a whole. So I want to thank you tonight, and those are my comments. Thank you, Mary Easton.
Thank you very much, Councillor Timmers. And Councillor Brunet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity. To Matt, to Heather, to your entire team. It has been quite a journey. Seems like we've been talking about this for a long, long time, and I can't even imagine the countless hours that your team and the CEOs have put in. You know, I think this council has demonstrated over certainly this last term and probably the last two terms, 7.5 years, our need to make sure we're an inclusive community, that we're socially and economically we're ticking all the boxes and giving mobility freedom. And We certainly have had a lot of questions over the last year and a bit, maybe 2 years. I think you guys have gone a long way in looking at the governance model and making sure that this is going to be sustainable. And for that, I appreciate all the hard work. Along with Councillor Mikulak and some of the other councillors, I did have serious concerns about the model in terms of financial sustainability. At the end of the day, there's only one taxpayer pocket. 37 cents of every taxpayer dollar stays in Lincoln. 51 cents goes to the region, the other 12 cents goes to the school board. So I do think, you guys have done a great job in looking at the model short term. I do believe it will be a challenge. And I'm looking at Councillor Foster and I'm looking at Councillor Mayor Easton. I think the challenge will be for those regional councillors as we move forward, making sure that all those pockets, whether it's transportation, whether it's hospitals, whether it's sanitation, or now it's transit, that will be the balance moving forward. At the end of the day, those decisions will impact our residents. And I wish them Godspeeds with those deliberations as we go forward. But I think you guys have done a great job. I think we've looked at all the concerns. We talk about all the different things that we are in Lincoln, whether it's environmentally, sensitive. This is checking off all the boxes for the things that we say are our goals and objectives. So thank you for all your hard work, and congratulations on receiving your triple majority. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And Councillor Pachariva.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wanted to thank Matt and his team for coming back tonight from, that first meeting, Matt, where we had, and we talked about the governance model, and Lincoln now has representation on that board. We have a citizen now on that board. We had concerns about the financial model, and now it's a user pay. So the more service you use, the more contribution, and that's fair. I remember sitting at a session in the town of Grimsby on transit, probably 8 years ago, and then talking about looking at Bradford, West Gwillimbury, on how their fixed link transit was there, and Councillor Brené was there, Councillor Rinchman. We came back and we took a leap of faith and we established U-Link through Mr. Kirkopoulos and our team here. You know what? Was it the be all and end all? No, but it was a start. You have to start somewhere. And now you've got this plan. I think a consolidated regional transit system is the right thing to do on so many levels. It's a struggle and a hardship to navigate different transit systems, schedules, routes, and fares. Those with their own vehicle may not appreciate this fact. Having rode the milk run from Beamsville to London many years ago going to university, I can appreciate a system that's seamless, that for one fare, I can get on and can travel anywhere through the region. So kudos to you and your team. That's excellent work. From our letters tonight in the package, our business community sees it as an essential need. Our social services organizations also embrace the concept wholeheartedly. Access to reliable transportation is one of the largest barriers to employment. A regional transportation system would provide this connection between job seekers and employers looking to fill a void. And one only has to open the paper these days and see the tremendous void in the number of workers needed and with the job wanted postings. If we truly believe in our community vision in Lincoln as a place to grow, a place to prosper, a place to belong, we must embrace this opportunity of an amalgamation plan that has been talked about for 50 years. The improved connectivity will benefit us also. Thank you very much. Don't really have a question. My questions were answered. If I can take a feather from Councillor Timmer's hat, but you know what? I just wanted to announce my support for this plan. And thank you very much for the hard work and dedication that everyone's done to this, to get us to this point. You know, you said 3 rounds of meetings with everyone. Appreciate the due diligence. And I think we're at a point now where we can be proud of the final concept. So thank you.
Thank you very much for the question, Councillor Patrick. I'm sure it was in there somewhere. Councillor Russell, round
Thank
two.
you, Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, again, Councillor Patriva's milk run story did pull at my heartstrings a little bit. And even though I do have some angst about the long-term viability of this and what the costs are going to be on, I think I am leaning towards the social benefit of it, but I'll wait to my vote for that. But I still do have a question to Matt, through you, Madam Mayor, if you will. The board makeup, I know we have one allocation on the 15-person board, but the region ultimately has veto power over that selection. Is that correct?
Matt,
So through you, Madam
is it a
Mayor.
recommendation?
Through you, Madam Mayor, in terms of the process. So each municipality will nominate both their local and or regional council representative on behalf of your council and the township and cities, various cities, and then subsequently that citizen nominee as well. So you recommend those nominations to regional council, who ultimately, and perhaps Councillor Foster and even Mayor Easton can speak to sort of that process. It's fair to say that typically, given that this process has been initiated by regional council, they would look to respect those views of the municipalities, ensure that those names that are submitted are ratified should they meet the criteria as requested. So to your question, ultimately they rest with regional council, but ultimately we see that process as ratifying the recommendations as provided by the 12 municipalities.
Thank you, Matt. Follow up, Madam Mayor, last one. So my concern there is obviously, again, what I read into that is, again, you say typically, and you note that, again, it doesn't necessarily mean that who we do nominate to be our board member or commission board member is going to be the ultimate selection. So my question is, for those of us that do have some angst about the financial viability and want to make sure that our representative is ensuring our accountability as best we can, how can we do that without being able to solidify that person on the board? Like what could you say to us to alleviate that concern down the road, that if we can't even 100% confirm and choose who we want on the commission, that our views and our needs are being represented at the table adequately?
So through you, Madam Mayor, and I would reassert that the process of recommendation and ratification by regional council is the preferred solution. And though I can't commit to that 100%, convention says that ratification occurs. But maybe in the alternative scenario that you suggested, Councillor, petitioning from Lincoln Council directly to the commission, subsequently directly to regional council, ultimately is where those concerns can be heard. We know that in other municipalities, there are requests, for example, to add service. Service can be requested from the municipality directly to the commission if there are financial concerns directly to what services are being provided in any municipality. A motion from town council to the commission would certainly carry significant weight in terms of being able to amend whatever that service might look like and afford that same financial oversight. In terms of regional council at budget time, that's also where Town of Lincoln regional representatives also have an opportunity to express those views of town council at the regional level as the budget of the commission is being considered each and every year, and ultimately requires approval of regional council to proceed.
Okay, thank you.
I can chime in just briefly, Councillor, and tell you that as all other committees, if we meet the criteria for the committee, the region will accept the recommendation. And as I look at the list of the Transitional Transit Commission Board, politically, and there certainly will be political decisions made, even with St. Catharines having 3 and Niagara Falls having 2, the collective of any, a collective of any of the other municipalities who would have a similar concern, if you will, would outweigh those votes. But in my experience, I have never seen the region not accept the recommendation of the municipality, because we send representatives who meet the criteria as they request it. So I don't think there's no reason to believe that the motivation for the selection would change. Does that help you? As good as it can.
It does, Madam Mayor. It does assuage a little bit of the anxiety. It would be helpful if I knew what the criteria was and if that was written and out in the forefront, as opposed to just being defined and discussed in general. But
okay.
It is what it is.
All right. Well, tonight we're really looking at the consolidated program. So let's move on. And thank you very much, Councillor. And Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just a quick comment from me. You know, I have no doubt that moving to a regional transit system is the right thing to do. You know, this council has been supportive of local transit now since we lost the Canada Coach line a number of years ago. And then we brought on, as Mike mentioned, ULink. And that was our response to what we heard in our community. And it was a brave, bold move, you know, and we knew that it would cost us money, you know, that it wasn't being put out there so that the ridership would pay for it, and that it was a service that we chose to provide. We then signed up when the region came calling with an on-demand model that provided a wider catchment that made sense for us, supporting our rural geography. And it now makes sense to me that we sign up for providing a fully integrated network throughout the region to our residents. The impact that I think it will have on our municipality may not fully be realized for a few years or even several years. But as we grow, I'm confident that, you know, say 5-10 years down the road, we will look back on tonight as the start of something really, really beneficial to our Lincoln residents. So, Madam Mayor, I know there's angst, you know, in moving something to the region. There always is, and you hand over control. But, you know, I look at where we've come from and where we are headed as a community. And regional transit and integrated regional transit system just makes so much sense to me. So those are my comments. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. And Councillor Brunet, second round.
Yeah, just very quickly, Madam Mayor. You know, as I was preparing for the meeting and reading all these reports and letters, and I don't know what and how we gauge success as we move forward. It'll be something that we will deal with as it comes, you know, whether we can increase, you know, full day service of GO to Niagara, gauging success and how this impacts us. But I'm just wondering through you, Madam Mayor, to Matt, as you guys have transitioned through this over the last few years, when I look at some of the statistics that were garnered by the survey, and I look at 17% are daily using transit in Niagara from the people that, you know, the 3,000 odd people that did the survey, and 44% have never used transit. As you guys have gone through this evolution of this over the last few years, have you looked at those numbers? Can you comment as to how you see these numbers moving forward, or what your hope and aspirations are? What will be gauged as success? And again, I don't have any input into what is a good number and what is a bad number, but I just asked that question just out of curiosity more than anything as we move forward. Through you, Madam Mayor, I think.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Brunet. Indeed, it's called mode split, mode share in terms of transit jargon. But suffice to say that we want to move that hierarchy and move the needle from dependence on vehicles, cars, independent rides, to dependence on transit, making transit more accessible, better coverage, less expensive, all create conditions where people are compelled to then say, if it's $3 for me to take a trip, I can do it off my phone and it picks me up at the end of my driveway. Maybe I think twice about getting a second vehicle. Those kind of factors are really what lead to driving change in their transportation habits of individuals. So that's where we see in some of our larger communities where the mode split or the mode share, you're seeing transit go up, vehicle usage come down. And ultimately, I mean, you can look at the HOV lanes in any of the 400 series highways. You see that there is still a large dependence on single vehicle operation. And Niagara will continue to have similar single vehicle usage. However, making transit more accessible is a compelling way to start to move people off the highway, out of their cars, onto transit. And in many cases with a rideshare scenario, I'm cutting down my wait times. I'm getting to my same destination. So going forward, we do see and have seen with the introduction of on-demand transit, a significant increase in the amount of transit usage compared to vehicles. And that's across the on-demand networks around Ontario and across Canada and the US, where that particular model really does complement well the rural scenario and allow for that mode split to really start to see a more effective decrease in the amount of people on vehicles.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. You know, Matt, I look at that, and as you're talking, you know, I think about here in Lincoln, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, we didn't have an active transportation committee, and I look at what we've done just here in Lincoln in connecting communities and getting people walking on trails and not getting in a car, but using other modes of transportation. And if we can just continue to expand on that through all 12 municipalities across Niagara, we'll be in a much better spot as we move forward. So thank you for that response.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And I'm going to move to Councillor Mikulik. And I know that there may be a tendency to jump on with another question, but I'm going to insist that I'm just looking at the time, that the questions really do need to be on the matter at hand, which is the decision to move to a consolidated system. Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you very much, Mayor Easton. Just a question to Dave Graham or staff. Have we had
I'm sorry, Councillor, we're dealing with the report as Mr. Robinson presented it. We're going to go to AD 0122 next. We're just questioning on the regional presentation at the moment.
I'm sorry, my understanding was that we were commenting to both.
We're just talking about I divided it up to try and focus. At the moment, we're going to move on to AD 0122, and you can ask your question then if that's okay. I
have one more question, if I may.
Certainly, go ahead.
With this regional transit, with this connectivity, I appreciate like the movement of people within, you know, neighbors and neighborhoods, neighboring communities, and this may or may not be within the realm of what we're speaking about, but is there any consideration to working with Hamilton on something like this? Like, how would somebody from Grimsby get to Costco in Stony Creek? How can that be? You know, I'm looking at this logistically speaking, like this is a 5-kilometer drive, and we have no way to do that, yet we're offering a $3 fare to get to Fort Erie. Like, is there any discussion with other municipalities in terms of this sort of endeavor?
So through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Mikulik, we have had extensive conversations with HSR, our peers in Hamilton, and we are in the final throes of being able to establish a connection at the very location that you had indicated at the Costco at 50 Road. So going forward, we're hopeful that that's established in the next couple of months, not waiting for any consolidation efforts. That is something that we want to offer in the current iteration of NRT On Demand, to make those connections to HSR the same way we would transfer at St. Catharines or at Niagara Falls. Grimsby, West Niagara residents should be able to transfer at HSR, and that location is a point of interest that we want to put on the western edge of the service area. And we're working extensively with the City of Hamilton to ensure that West Niagara residents can realize that particular point of interest. And as we go forward, additional ones as we look along that border of West Niagara with east, our neighbors to the west and their eastern border.
Yeah, I appreciate that response, and thank you for allowing me to ask that question.
Thank you very much, Councillor. All right, Councillor, now we've asked the questions of Mr. Robinson on his presentation. Now we're going to move to AD01-22, which is the staff report, and ask questions of our local staff, of the Lincoln staff. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Robinson, and to your team. You did a very fine job. I can't imagine that there's a question that you haven't been asked at this point. The question book must be quite large, but I certainly appreciate the concerns of Councillor. It's always a concern when you're giving up a certain amount of control, and there's a great deal of money involved. So, Councillor Mikulik, I'm going to ask you to put up your hand so that I can allow you to ask your question of the staff on the local report.
No, that's okay. I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone, councillors, does anyone have any questions of the Lincoln staff? Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers and seconded by Councillor Russell. The council receive and file report AD-01-22 regarding transit consolidation, moving transit forward in Niagara. And that Town of Lincoln Council consents to the passage of bylaw number 96-2021 of the Regional Municipality of Niagara, being a bylaw to provide Niagara Region with the exclusive authority to establish, operate, and maintain a consolidated transit system for the Niagara region. Madam Clerk, would you please call out the vote?
Councillor Brunet,
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yes.
Councillor Mikulik,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Support.
and that carries.
Thank you very much. Councillors, I want to thank you very much. You've done your due diligence, and I'm sure that due diligence is going to continue. I believe this is absolutely the right decision for our community. We're going to have good representation on the board and on the advisory committee, which will ensure that the checks and balances remain throughout the process. And I'd like to again thank the regional staff for the hard work that they've done in responding to every question that the councillors have asked over many months, and particularly over the last couple of weeks. I also want to acknowledge the work that the Lincoln staff have done as acting as a go-between to ensure that those questions landed in the right spot, and for also preparing the report and addressing our local circumstances. So thank you very much, Mr. Kirkopoulos and your staff. Now, Madam Clerk, I'm going to ask the councillors if they'd like a break at this point. Is there anybody who wouldn't like a break? Okay, we'll take a 10-minute break and we'll come back at 8 p.m.